Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Welcome to the podcast. Today we are back with Eric Hiler with Dulead. Eric, welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back for part two.
Part three, depends on how you're counting. So the reason I wanted to have you back is the first time we recorded the podcast, which didn't get to air, you went into this beautiful illustration of competition that I think you got from a Notre Dame professor. Is that correct? And I wanted to kick off this episode by having you kind of revisit that model, share it, and then maybe we could just talk a little bit about how you use it in practice.
Sure. Yeah. This comes from two professors of mine at Notre Dame, Joe Urbany and Jim Davis, a little over 10 years ago. And it's basically a model here. We'll do the podcast version of it since we don't have any visual aids. So we'll try and do the non-visual aid version of this. But hopefully, if you're listening, we can make it really easy. So let's start with...
Is there a place I could link to in the show notes?
There's a company that's been built on this, a software company.
Nice.
So we can talk about that for sure. You can link to them. And then, we'll definitely find a spot to link for probably a video of Joe explaining it in just a couple minutes or something like that. So we can get it straight from him. The other thing is they have an HBR article that goes, I think it was 2007. So we could post to that. And
all right. I will work with you after this to get all those details. We'll get those in the notes.
All right. So the model, you need two tools, I guess. Let's start with. So in your right hand, you need to grab 3 circles. Just invent them, put them in your hand. You got 3 circles. And in your left hand, you need a pile of push pins. So we're going to build a mental model from these assets. So we start with a Venn diagram. So we're going to take our 3 circles. We're going to make them into a Venn diagram. So just to remind everybody what a Venn diagram is, these are where the 3 circles overlap each other. And we want to put 2 circles overlapping each other at the top and then 1 overlapping those 2 at the bottom. So it kind of looks like an upside down pyramid. So anyhow, that is the model we're going to start with. The circle in the top left is going to represent you. It's your offerings, it's your company, and more specifically, it's what your customers perceive your offerings and your company to do, your products, your services, whatever it may be.
So this is the customer perceived value prop.
This is, the customer's perception of really your offerings, right? So it's you, but it's their perception of you.
Okay.
Not exactly the value proposition yet. The top right circle is going to be your customer and what they want and need. Okay. And so obviously these 2 circles overlap in a unique way. This is where what you do and what they want come together. And that's interesting. But for a model on competitive analysis, we need the 3rd circle, which is going to be our competition circle. And you can think about that competition circle as a single competitor. You could think of it as just a composite of all of your competitors. However you want to think of it, but that's the circle that goes at the bottom, and it overlaps our top 2 circles as well. And so now you actually end up with, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different spaces, and each one is unique. It helps us think about, gives us a mental model to think about competitive analysis.
Where do you and your competition both serve the customer's need? Where do you only serve the customer's need, but your competition doesn't?
Correct.
Where is nobody serving the customer's need?
Correct.
Yeah.
Where's the competition serving and I'm not?
Yep.
Exactly. So each of these areas help us. They help us think about competition in a very tangible, unique way. And so, those sections that we're talking about, let's take the one right in the middle. This is where our company is. This is where our customer is, and it's where our competition is. So this area, you could think of it as like a bloodbath. You could think of it as a black hole. You could think of it as a lot of different ways. Everybody's there, and there's really no defensible or differentiated value when you're doing competitive analysis. That everybody's there. So there's nothing that you can uniquely say, this is us, and some other salesperson can't also authentically sit across from your customer and say, this is us, right? It's the same thing. So now it may be points that this is an important area. It may be the table stakes to be in the game at all. Like your customer may simply say, you got to have these things. If you give me something else, that might be unique, but you got to have these things. So everybody does them. And then there's the area that's really fun, which is we always called it the green area. This is where we are and our customer is, but our competition is not. So if we take this upside down pyramid, it's that top central area where these cross over. Now, this is very, very unique and very, very valuable because we have differentiated value. Okay, and let's take this and make it a little bit more tangible. We've got a map, kind of, if we think about this Venn diagram. Let's go back to our left hand and the pile of push pins that we have. Each one of those push pins, think of it as a choice factor. So when a customer makes a choice, let's take cell phones, for example, just to pick something that everybody's familiar with.
Yeah.
So you could have the size of the screen. You could have the memory, the storage space. You could have the processing power. Each one of these things is a push pin. So you take this push pin and you place it on this map where it goes. So if you are back before Apple had larger screens, we could take Samsung's push pin of a gigantor screen and we could put it in their green area. This is where some customers were. This is where they were. This is where Apple was not. And so that was differentiated for Samsung back then. Now, that's a little bit less true. You could take, let's say, data privacy with a lot of different companies. And maybe Facebook doesn't get to put data privacy as much. You could think about any competitive marketplace that you want to with this mental model. The one that I'll use as an example, I mentioned previously, I used to be in the steel processing business. And I use this model every week, as a matter of fact, with our sales team. So we had a process where every Friday, it was basically a cadence of accountability. Every Friday, I met with my sales team at 11 a.m. And our sales people represented what they do this week, what were their order bookings, where they go, who they talk to, and where am I going next week, things like that. And depending on how successful their week of bookings were, we determined in that meeting where we were going to go to lunch on Friday afternoon. So, if it was McDonald's or occasionally we went somewhere nicer. Anyhow, anytime we were awarded new business, they were required to tell me what was that green area thing. So I used this model and I said, guys, when we are out there in the marketplace, you have to be always constantly mining for, thinking about trying to find these push pins, these choice factors that go just where we are and the customer is and not where any of our competition is. And in this market, it's really, really the black hole area in the center, or the bloodbath area, is huge because our customers tell us it's this thick, it's this wide, and there's no deviating from it. You can't set yourself apart by saying, well, we'll, do something different dimensionally. No, they're making a part. It has to be this way.
Right. And they're probably using 5 different suppliers, even though you're one of them. So it all has to turn out to be the same product anyway.
That's exactly right. So this is a market, if you think about it competitively, where you're not allowed to differentiate yourself.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So we were constantly trying to find ways to differentiate ourselves because we wanted margins better than what were commonly available in the industry. And so we had to find ways to differentiate ourselves. So our people and our core values, and the way we treat our customers, and frankly, flip this, not even our customers, with our vendors, how we paid our bills. You could switch this, forget competitive analysis with a customer or even a vendor, but how about with our employees? We could use this same map to understand why our employees were making choices that they were making. So anyhow, every Friday when we had new business, our people were reporting on what was it that caused us to have a unique advantage in this situation.
Can you make that tangible? Can you give a couple of examples of unique advantages that you guys discovered through that process?
Well, I can. Yeah, I mean, one fun one is we had a chainsaw company from Germany, and they were specifying steel here in the United States. And they were on a tour. A bunch of German guys were on a tour. They were over in America going around to all of these different potential steel suppliers for them. And we sat down with them and we handed out business cards like is, common. You trade business cards. And this, I'm not going to pretend to do a German accent or anything, but this very thick German accent comes from the guy that was in charge. And he says, "What is this relationships and stewardship thing on your business cards?" And it turns out building relationships and pursuing stewardship, those were our core values. That was really the vision of the company. We put relationship and stewardship right on our business cards. And this guy he was totally taken aback by it. And so we started this conversation all about like who we are, what we're all about, how we're uniquely different as people, as a company. So that is one thing that for us in the steel business was out there. It was one of these push pins. It was the purpose behind the company. It was the type of company that we were that was out there in our green area, and he didn't see it anywhere else. It was interesting to him, and it was thought-provoking to him, and we had this really wonderful conversation about things more important than, processing steel, to be frank about it. Now, that was our job. That's what we had to get done. So he wasn't going to hire us to do that if we didn't, actually pull off those. He had to be convinced that we could do all the table stakes.
You still have to have the table stakes. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. We took him on a tour of our facilities. He had to see that, there's the rolling mill in it and it works and it does a good job. And here's the X-ray charts out of it. This is, that the steel is a very tight tolerance on thickness and all different kinds of things like this. But that is a very specific, unique, tangible way I think you can understand that our company, where we were, is where none of our competition was, or at least none of our competition that he was touching, that he was going to talk to. And we got orders from that deal. And so I cannot attribute the win in the marketplace to that entirely, but I can attribute an advantage that we have, a reason to be memorable, right, and, some things that made us distinct and unique in a marketplace where we're not allowed to be distinct and unique.
Yeah.
So, I hope that helps.
No, that's great.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. For our model, let's go back to our model. We've got our 3 circles. We got push pins, and there are push pins that when we look at ourselves, our push pins don't show up down where maybe our competitors' push pins show up. And that's in that space where our customer has something that they need and want. Our competition is providing it to them and we don't. So this is really identifying, understanding lost opportunities. And again, since we're talking about the perception that our customer has about us, that could be they perceive we don't offer a particular product or service and our competition does. And it's really an education. It's what requires us to move that and defend against our competition taking orders from us. It could be an input to our strategy. Where do we need to go? Do we want to, as a competitive market strategy, do we want to take that away from our competition, or do we accept that, that's something that we don't want to do? So again, each one of these spaces helps us understand something mentally, and it's a really simple 3-circle Venn diagram model. And we just think it's ourselves, it's our customers, and it's our competition. And what's really fun when you take it from mentally processing, where are we, moving to what are the strategic dynamics at play here? What is going to move our customer towards us and away from our competition? Because if you start thinking about these circles being able to move dynamically, which of course the marketplace is very fluid, it's very dynamic, it's going to move. What choices are we making to create new products, new offerings, new features that move in the direction that our customer is or our customer wants to go, whether or not they even understand it?
It's interesting as you're talking about that. It also makes me think of manipulating the model over time to show different customers, right? So as you think about a growing company, so let's say Dulead could be a great example of this, right? So today, Dulead is still in crazy startup mode. And so an ideal customer for you probably isn't a Fortune 100 company.
Correct.
However, if any are listening and they'd like to bring you guys in, that'd be great.
Right.
But that's going to be a stretch, right? Where an ideal client for you is probably a small and medium-sized business, one that you and your team can kind of get really good, high-quality feedback from as part of the process. And, that you can manage expectations more appropriately in that kind of environment. And so when you think of drawing that diagram today, your customer is going to be, I'm going to make stuff up, but, could be a 100 to 300 person company that is in these types of industries. And as you come up with a strategy that says, okay, 5 years from now, who's our customer?
Correct.
Which may not be that customer, right? So it may be a different customer that you start to overlay on your diagram. How does that change the red space, right? In the middle where everybody's competing? How does that change your unique value proposition? And how does that change what they need? So it's interesting as you talk about that. I even start to play around with well, maybe our customer changes over time, or we had new types of customers because we have new value props.
Yeah, exactly. Each one of these circles could represent an individual customer, and that lets you tell one story. It could represent a vertical, and that could tell a story that's a composite of a grouping of customers. It could represent a very abstract persona that's out there. And yeah, that's right. In how it unfolds over time and visualizing it over time, frankly, is one of the things that Joe, my professor, and a friend and mentor of mine, Gary Jago, they started a company called Venly to take this model and turn it into a commercial software product. And they've been working on that. And part of the interesting thing is you're getting feedback from customers that is it's the data behind these push pins that are all over the map. And then as you take feedback in the future, these push pins move as the feedback from the customer changes. These push pins move around the map. As Apple introduces a larger screen iPhone, well, then Samsung, or the pin on customer choice factor screen size, moves towards the center and away from their competition. And that's something those dynamics are very interesting.
So you were very purposeful about leveraging this model in the steel business. Have you been doing this with Dulead?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I have, because I think this way now. I've had this model from, I guess it was 2005. So it's been quite a long time before Joe and Jim even published their Harvard Business Review paper. They were teaching it to us at Notre Dame, and I took to it right away. I loved it. And I've been thinking this way for quite some time. So yeah, I walk around thinking about competitive analysis this way. And so it's just part of my own, I guess it's just, you get it with me. So when I'm working on product roadmap, things like that, this is how I'm processing these sorts of things. But no, we're not actively out there surveying customers and formally visualizing it on a graph and stuff like that. Just because, kind of like we talked about in the first time we got together, I'm really just focused on the customer across the table from me.
Yeah.
And I'm highly focused on those two circles, ours, what we can do, and theirs, what they need and want. And I guess I come up and I look around occasionally about what's going on with the competition, especially if it gets in my way. But since we're a small startup, we don't have a marketing team that's out there doing this, kind of constantly thinking about it, chewing on it, trying to figure out, where to go next. So yes, I think this way, but no, we're not we don't formally pursue these things as a small startup.
Yeah. Do you have an intuition? And there's no right answer to this, right? So, thus, do you have an intuition? Do you have an intuition for at what stage in a company's growth curve that this kind of thinking becomes really valuable or becomes necessary in terms of okay, now we need to dedicate resources to paying more attention to our competition and how we're differentiating and things like that? When do you see that happening with Dulead, or can you point to maybe other companies in the wild where you think, no, they're at the stage, they need to be thinking about this now?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have active marketing efforts, then to me, this is something that to me, I don't know a better model, right? So if you think about some of the models that we've had in the past, and one that everybody knows or most people knows is SWOT analysis, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a great way to think about it, but it doesn't visualize. It doesn't help you strategize. And so if you're actively strategically building, paying for, delivering marketing for the purposes of filling up a funnel, then I highly recommend that you use this model, whether it be internally as a team where you're just thinking through your decision making and hopefully you would be motivating your strategy, where Venly, the company, the software company that's doing this, has really found traction is with actually enabling marketers. And so they have a lot of marketing agency connections, because these marketing agencies, you or I could hire them to go fill the top of our funnel. And for them to be able to do that effectively, what's their strategy? What is motivating their strategy? Why are they doing that? This is a fantastic model for them to do it. And with Venly, it's actually software to help them do it.
It's interesting. As you're talking, I'm thinking about, I have a meeting tomorrow morning around startup competitors to go a little bit meta.
Right.
So we track about 20 competitors to startup competitors, right? So there's tons of ways that you can get the same information we provide. Some of it's 100% automated. It's software that you can, subscribe to, or data. It's more like data you can subscribe to. Some of it is, you could hire a high-end market research firm to come in and do the $10,000 report of your industry and your specific competitors and stuff like that. And we're weirdly somewhere in the middle, right? We're not all humans. We're not all, automated data. We're somewhere in the middle, and we try to do it at a fundamentally different price point.
Right.
And as we think about tomorrow morning, we have a meeting to kind of talk through the next iteration of marketing and what do we want to try. We had some failed digital marketing efforts in the past. And part of that is because I think we were still figuring out who we are, who our customer, of course. I mean, we're still in the super early startup phase too. And now the theory, part of what we're going to be doing to drive that discussion specifically around where should we be marketing? Should it be Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook? Where are the places we should be spending? Where's our customer? And then what's the message that we should be delivering along with that? And then how does that tie into then that message? This is the part I'm not good at. How does that tie into the overall user experience from the point you get that first message to when you land on the site, to when you check out, to when you get your final deliverable?
Yes.
That whole thing, which that's like just a big black box to me. I need help.
Sure.
But that's the conversation we're going to start tomorrow morning, which is super interesting to me. How it's all going to start with us reviewing, okay, these are the competitors. This is where they're meeting our customer today. How are we similar? How are we different? And then how do we leverage that for messaging? So
well, and I don't want to turn it into a blatant Venly pitch or anything like that, but their story.
Don't worry, Venly's now on notice. They're going to be on the podcast,
right? Okay,
that's got to happen now.
Gary, you're welcome, buddy. No, but their story might be illustrative here, because they started with, and this is oversimplifying it, so I don't want to get it, too simplified, or I don't want to undersell what they've done, but Joe and Jim were doing this work at Notre Dame and they found a lot of traction with it. They were consulting. Obviously, that's what professors with good models do. They go out and they consult. Then they said, you know what, this is really a software product that we can build. And so they started Venly. And full disclosure, I am a small investor in Venly. So
you're safe.
Yeah. So anyhow, and what they were able to do is they were able to take this data visualization, the data gathering, they were able to build all of that and put it in this beautiful, literally it's beautiful format for people to see, visualize, and then provide some consulting services along the way to help their customers strategize. What their next iteration is really becoming a content intelligence platform. And so it's taking this model as the foundation of saying what's going to work in a uniquely defensible way, right? What's that green area? And then how do we market with content that's going to be valuable for our customers based on what those things are, where they are, what they want and need. what we can uniquely provide and have content that's driven through, they're building a platform. So an AI platform to help marketers figure out in this, it's kind of an emerging space in marketing technology of content intelligence. And that's where they're moving next. That's where so it's gone from this model that was tried, true, and proven to say, look, this is a great way to not only conceptualize competitive strategy, or competitive analysis, but then use it to motivate the creation of strategy based on what moves you wanted to cause to happen. And then you can go back, test it again, replot these push pins, see if you've been effective or not. And so it is a way to actually validate then on the other side. The same model helps you validate, or it helps you understand where you are, and then validate strategy. Did it move the things dynamically the way we wanted it to? And now they're talking about moving into kind of a platform for content intelligence for marketers, whether it be agencies or, big brands that are doing their own marketing.
Interesting. So that sounds very much like a move into the demand jump space, right? I don't know if you're familiar with demand jump.
Yeah, I don't. I know a little bit about demand jump because they're local here, but I'm not entirely familiar with them.
All right, right on. Thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming back on the podcast and sharing. That was great.
My pleasure. Always good to talk to you, Mike.
Thanks, man.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.